Where are my most beautiful queens in the house?
Hey everybody, it's your girl Jamilah. Welcome to the Queen's Address, okay? Welcome into the Queendom. Today I have a very special guest, Brother Minister Donnell Muhammad. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, sir. And also, Brother Khari Enaharo. Thank you so much for joining the Queen's Address podcast today. Thank you so much. So we're going to get right on into it. Time magazine had the headline, Slavery Reparations Are Coming. The particular issue was about Barbados and their historic push for slavery reparations. However, it's time to discuss the issue of foundational Black Americans and the reparations conversation coming up. This is an election year, and we see a lot of people talking, ready to, or seemingly ready to talk about it now. And so, Brother Khari, Vice President Kamala Harris in 2019 floated a new idea, funding for mental health treatment as a form of reparations for slavery. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think any step toward justice is a step that must be taken. When you look at the question of reparations, reparations means what? Making up for what's missing. So what's missing in Black folks? Everything. What was taken from Black people? Everything. Our language, our history, our culture, our families. We were totally decimated historically. And what they did is that not only did they decimate it, they went in and mind controlled us to the point where they took out our original mind and put in another mind, a mind that they designed and they controlled and they grew and perpetuated over the years, a mind that teaches you to hate and not trust Blackness and love and trust whiteness. That's the whole construct. So if you're really going to do reparations, then you got to make up for what's missing. You can't give me no Section 8 programs and call it reparations. And that's what's happening. But a lot of young Black people who weren't back in the day, so to speak, don't know that. So older Black people have to say, that's not reparations. I mean, if they offer it to you, take it, but don't call it reparations. Reparations is when you make up for what's missing, and what's missing is everything. We're a people that produce nothing. We are totally dependent on white supremacy domination for our entire existence. If white folks, white supremacists, decided tomorrow, we're not going to supply anything in the Black community, we would just literally be in New Orleans all over again. Because we have no way, we have developed nothing independently to supply our own needs, supply our own clothes. Now, we were moving in that direction. One of the nation builders was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There's no question about it. Marcus Garvey. There were not a whole lot of Black nation builders, but there were some who who saw the macro picture, who saw the big picture, and understood that if a people are wholly dependent on another people for their survival, and a people who've had a history of hostility towards them, then they're in real bad shape. So if you're going to really do reparations, to me, that has to be the criteria. You got to make up for what's missing, and that's everything.
Yes, sir. Brother Minister Donnell?
Sure.
You have a remark about President Kamala Harris's idea?
Oh, sure. I think the idea of...
I'm sorry, Vice President. I apologize, Vice President.
That's fine.
Yes, sir.
We got to give people their
We'll get in trouble if I don't say it right.
We have to say it. We have to always maintain respect, even if it's our foe.
Yes, sir.
Respect is still a requirement. I discount Kamala Harris's idea in any idea that offers crumbs as opposed to a real solution. Brother Khari pointed it out, and I will simply read it. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad presented a program way back in the 30s to share with the so-called, at that time, referred to as Negro leadership. The 60 to 70 Black towns that we had, we did not have them because white folks granted us any money. It was simply because segregation was the law of the land. So we had no other choice but to build our own black town that they destroyed. Then when integration was introduced, all of the black banks, all of the black businesses went away because the offer of integration was a hypocritical trick offered by the white man so he would not have to do what Brother Khari just pointed out was crumbs, trinkets, and that the young people today don't understand.
Yes, sir.
So he said to them, for those who said he was too harsh in his ask, he said, we want freedom. We want a full and complete freedom. We want justice, equal justice under the law. We want justice applied equally to all, regardless of creed, class, or color. So for you say we hate white people, he's saying it right here. We don't care what your color is. We want justice equally applied. We know we don't get it equally. Then he said, we want equality of opportunity. We want equal membership in society with the best in civilized society. Now, if we can't get these three, if we can't get freedom, if we can't get justice, if we can't get equality, then the fourth one, which is preparation foundation, we want our people in America whose parents or grandparents were descendants from slaves to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of our own, either on this continent or elsewhere. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to provide such land, and that land must be fertile and minerally rich, and they should help us for the next 20 to 25 years until we are able to do it for ourselves. If for anybody want to say it can't be done, you did it for Europe and the Marshall Plan. You're doing it for Israel right now. You did it for the Japanese after you incurred them, after you bombed Japan and the Japanese citizens here. So don't tell me you can't do it. You're already doing it. So we simply say, that's what America owes, and we're not talking about paying some reparations to some people, individuals. Reparations are never a product that's given to individual people. That's not reparations. He pointed that out. You can't tell someone you take some money and that's reparations. No. Reparations are put in a national fund, and then the government of that nation distributes those funds to the benefit of its citizens that are a part of that nation. You never pay reparations individually, especially in the hands of individuals who have no idea of what to do with that money. And my last point on that is this: 85 to 90% of people that won the lottery, they are dead or dead broke, because when you put money in the hands of a fool and his money soon part. You don't put millions of dollars in the hands of individuals who have no idea of what to do with that money.
So I guess my next question has already been answered. Are Black people organized enough?
No.
I'm going to just cross that question. No. But I do want to ask this, and Brother Khari, I'll start with you. In the GOP, some say that welfare exists as a form of reparations. What are your thoughts on that?
Listen, when it comes to politics, this is how I see it as it relates to the issues they put forward. It's one group of white supremacists calling another group of white supremacists. It's a game. It's a game they play. Trump versus Biden con game, all of it. And what happens is Black folks wind up choosing which white folk they want to go with. And they become more bulldogish defending these white folks. They become their defense attorneys, and they wind up defending them more than the white folks even defend themselves. And so what happens is we start getting proposals from this end and that end. all of it's designed to confuse black people and mislead them. And so what I say is, forget that. Develop your own plan. You don't follow any party. The only party you follow is the party you create.
Yes, sir.
A black political party.
Amen.
Independent, totally independent. Anybody that you work with has to be able to meet your agenda. Specifically, I mean hardcore, and you play hardball. You don't have any allegiance to any of them.
Right.
Only allegiance you have is to that agenda. Therefore, we created in Columbus a Black Caucus of Central Ohio. And that Black Caucus is designed to do just that. We have no allegiance to any party. The only allegiance we have is to ourselves and to our agenda. We're unapologetically selfish. Chinese can be Chinese, nobody says anything. Germans can be Germans, nobody says anything. The only time they want to question us is when black people stand for black people. And so I don't, I hear all these proposals, but I'm not getting into that game. And I say, white supremacists calling another white supremacist white supremacists. It's a game they play.
That's a fact.
And what we have to do is be aware of it, stand back and look at it and say, this is how we're going to maneuver. This is what we're going to watch out for. This is what we're going. And the first thing we're going to do is study words. We're going to understand that the power of words are used to mislead us. Words are the basis for propaganda. And those words can hypnotize, they can mind control, they do all of the things. I have a new book coming out in which I speculate, in which I talk about the mind control of black people and how white supremacy domination has done that over the last 400 years.
Yes, sir.
I lay out very specifically what the game is.
Yes, sir. We can't wait for the pre-order period on that book to come out.
Yeah.
Okay. Minister Donnell, what are your feelings? What are your thoughts about, the Republican Party? Well, some members of the Republican Party believing that welfare and certain government aid programs is the answer to the reparations question.
The Republican Party, the Democratic Party, and any other party that's funded by, consists of their white leadership is a party that we don't want to be a part of. I agree with Brother Khari that we have to have our own black independent party, which includes not only the words, because words have meaning, words have power. We were tricked into slavery through language. We have been kept in slavery through the language of the Constitution, through the language of all of their laws, through the language of the parties. And then underneath a party that has to be independent, that's solely backed by us, we also have to be prepared to help fund our own parties. See, because what happens when we try to get black politicians into office, well, we usually don't have the money because we're in the minority, quote unquote, in this country. So what they do is there's some big, like he said, Patrick Buchanan or Bill Gates, he offers some money. What's his name? Soros offers some money. And so the candidate then is obligated, once he gets there, Barack Obama sat with the minister and told him he was not going to alienate those downtown or uptown because he knew that if all black folks voted for him, and 99% did, both the first time, I don't know about the second time, but the first time, that it still wouldn't be enough to get him in office. It was going to take some white folks to get him there playing their game. So whoever pays the piper to pay for these campaigns, then that candidate feels black or white, he's inclined toward those lobbyists that got him in there. So we have to be prepared to not, as he said, to groom our candidate. And then we can't cry, I'm broke, I'm poor all the time. We have to be willing to generate the fundraisers so that our candidate can remain independent. Because if I'm backing you with my talent, my wealth, and my gifts to help you, then you will remain. Whoever pays the piper calls the tune.
Calls the tune. Yes, sir. And so what does it mean to provide reparations? It's the act of making amends, offering expiation, or giving satisfaction for a wrong. African Americans have been asking for reparations for years. The United States does pay reparations every day, just not to Black America. And so when we look at some of the places that the United States has paid reparations to, the Japanese, Native Americans, families that lost loved ones in 9/11, and the list goes on. The federal government even paid reparations to slave owners for the emancipation of their slaves in the midst of the Civil War. However, when we begin to talk about forced sterilizations, redlining, discrimination, unfair pay, domestic terrorism, and the list goes on, somehow to some, it's not considered oppression worthy. Our struggle. And so, Minister Donell, I'd like to start with you with this question. In 2023, are African Americans still oppressed?
To say to an oppressed people, we are a nation within a nation. Back in the 60s, 17 to 22 million, now between 40 to 60 million. So you name off a few entertainers, you name off a few athletes, and say they are rich and they have this and they can Oprah Winfrey and whatever have you.
You guys are fine.
But how can you be independent if you took the number of blacks that are millionaires, and even the ones that say they're billionaires, look at their contracts, and we can say this example. Yeezy, according to Forbes, was worth something like 500 billion. I mean, he was up there. But that was only on paper. So when white people, as he said earlier, with words make up a contract, that money, even with the athletes, he's $60 million over the next 5-10 years. That don't mean you don't get it all at one time.
Right.
And then by the time you pay back the advances and the mansions and the cars, you end up, that's how all of our entertainers, they got the fame, they got the notification, but they died broke while the managers and the agents died rich, leaving something for their children. So miss me, again, words. So you name off some famous people and they're wealthy off, but what about the masses of the people? Again, reparations and repair is not because some of us made it in spite of the damage, but their wealth is still controlled by you. Jeezy couldn't independently manufacture the shoes that he had. Michael Jordan didn't independently manufacture the shoes that were called Nikes. So yeah, so you become a millionaire off of it, but you don't own it. So your wealth is still controlled by the person who is the manufacturer, the producer, and you live in a country controlled by them. So no, ma'am. Yes, we're still oppressed. We are oppressed by the fact, as he pointed out again earlier, if you're not going to repair us mentally from the Willie Lynch syndrome, the robbing of our people, not only of the knowledge of themselves, the knowledge of others, but we don't even know the time. We don't know, have no idea of our history. All they want to teach us is Black History Month is our sojourn on the plantation. What about the life of the black man before the plantation? What about that? But anyway, no. Yes, we're still oppressed.
Yes, sir.
And yes, this game about you all are doing well. Who all is doing well? We're all not doing well.
Right, it's gaslighting. You know, I believe that. Brother Khari, your thoughts?
If you look at 2023.
Yes, sir.
Let's just look at, since they say that we're doing real well, the total wealth of white families in the world is $241 trillion. $241 trillion. The total wealth of black people in the world, at least 90% of them, totals up to under $2 trillion. Mm-hmm. So you compare 240 trillion to 2 trillion. Now that's 2 trillion that you don't produce and you don't own and you don't control.
Yes, sir.
So the question, what we're living under, this white supremacy domination, that continues regardless. White people control the whole economic process from the ground to final consumption. And every phase in that, that's real power. Black people get a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And most of the, as Minister Donnell said, most of those so-called celebrities, and I'm not attacking any of them.
Oh, not at all.
Where's their money? Who do they save with? Did they have many major black banks? Major black savings loan, major black stock operations, etc.? No. So who controls their wealth? And how liquid are they?
Right.
Can any of them put their hands on $5 million in cash today? I doubt it. You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
this
sir.
is set up as a con game because most of our people don't live like that. You go down in Cuba, see how our people live.
Right.
Go over in India, see how our people live. Go down to South America, go to Africa, all over the world. Look at how our people really live.
Right.
In America, the wealth of white folks is something like 120 trillion. The wealth of black folks is something like 1 trillion.
That's right. He's correct.
Now you tell me where the balance is. If we were doing the business correctly, then we would own an equitable percentage of all the wealth in this country. For example, if I'm 30% of the population, if justice existed,
Right.
if racial parity existed as opposed to racial warfare, which is what we're dealing with,
Right.
when the people stay in these conditions generation after generation, that's evidence of racial warfare. And so what happens is we are in a constant state of being behind it. There was one study that said black people economically are 50 years behind white folks in this country.
That's a fact.
We control nothing. Look, tell me what industry. We don't even control toilet tissue. Tell me what industry we control and tell me who we are. We're equivalent to the same slave people. If Reconstruction had been allowed to continue, like it was in 1870, 1860, 1870, black folk would have controlled 9 states outright,
Right.
Wow.
top to bottom.
Wow.
Smart white supremacists knew that. They said, look, we got to break this up.
Right.
We found out these people can think, they can write, they can plant.
Hard workers.
They got a nationalistic mind. They got skills. Whoa, they're going to take over.
You got to stop them.
We got to stop them. We would have controlled, and when I say control, I'm not talking about just politics. We would have controlled the whole educational infrastructure.
Right.
We would control the whole economic system.
Right.
We would have been able to supply clothes for ourselves. Our children wouldn't be out in the corner gambling. There wouldn't be no dope coming in our community. We would have total control over the male-female relationship dynamic. We wouldn't have fatherless homes. None of this stuff. When you see these conditions continue century, year after year, that is evidence of racial warfare. And we want to call it racism because racism, white folks can define racism and say, oh, it just means we have a misunderstanding. This ain't no
It's
misunderstanding.
a little bit more complex
Right.
than that.
No, this is racial
Yes,
warfare.
sir.
And
Yes,
here's
sir.
the evidence of it. Substandard schools, poverty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All over-sexualization. All of this stuff is a part of what they have done to keep us in the state that we're in today.
My father used to have a statement he would say to us growing up. He would say, why does our people love the devil? And we used to have to say, because the devil gives him nothing. And then we're like, well,
Why would you love somebody that gives you nothing?
He used to always say that. And then he would say, you guys have to promise me that you won't eat the wrong food. And when I hear you talk like that, you remind me of my father. And he would say, don't eat the wrong food. When you talk about the education system, I'm thinking the wrong food, what you consume.
I'll call it in my new book, white food. Yeah.
And not just with that, but the entertainment as well.
Yeah,
To your point about the hypersexualization
Right,
of the
right,
people.
right. All that.
That's the new weapon that they're using. against us.
Absolutely.
So what I'm saying is that, we control absolutely nothing. So you can say, well, they're not oppressed. Well, then show me when you got, how many of us are there allegedly?
40 to 60 million.
And even that population is being depleted.
Right.
Our numbers are not increasing because they're shooting this at us, that at us, that at us, and they're getting us to buy this stuff. We're killing off our babies, all kind of stuff. This is warfare.
Right. Yes, sir.
And we have to define it as warfare.
Otherwise,
so that,
you're going to lose, right?
And so you won't understand what's happening to you. And it's constant, year in and year out.
Yes, sir.
They know it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they've set up deception. Racism, modern racism is based on deception. You've got to fool them, Mr. Shemansky. You've got to keep them fooled so they don't know which way you're going. And so, you know, this is what I said. You get this con game, this Game of Thrones that they play.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what they're playing, this Game of Thrones.
Absolutely.
Constantly. But it's the same structure in place no matter who's doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
And they use, well, now you're a patriot. No, you're part of the elite. You're the far left. No, you're the far right. And it's dizzying. And it confuses black people. Right. And that's where they want us confused. So what we have to do is step back and see everything clearly and then organize where we want to go.
Absolutely.
That's the only way out of this.
Yes, sir.
Because they're going to continue to keep doing it.
Yeah, my dad had a nickname for them too. He called them the mischief makers.
Yes.
The authors of confusion.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
They, them, you know, all
You
of
have to
them.
reject, as we discussed earlier, the premise. If you accept the premise of another man, you have to also arrive at his conclusion. So that's why we have in a court of law, the prosecution presents, the defense presents, and the first thing the defense have to do if he's defending you is he has to reject the premise that the prosecutor is presenting to the jury. Because if you accept his premise, she's guilty, she's a murderer, she did A, B, C, and D. Okay, yeah, she may have done it, but see, here's the reason why. Well, then the conclusion is going to be you going to jail.
But you know something? They even broke up segregation because they realized something. Segregation had unintended consequences.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Black folk started developing for
At a
themselves.
fast
Exactly.
At one time, Minister? We had 500 hospitals in
Yes,
this
sir.
country.
Hotels.
We had
I read
hotels.
about
Yep.
Black towns that we owned and stores where we were producing the products.
Hotels.
That went
Grocery
Exactly.
stores.
Exactly.
tailors,
on
beauty
sports
salons.
franchises, we were becoming an independent population. That they could not have.
They had
You
to break it
cannot
up.
be their competitors.
Right.
They
Within
cannot
their-
allow
Because
that.
no matter what we get into,
They can't allow it.
we excel it.
That's
So
right.
the key then, sister, to the premise of the question is we have to get back in control of our manufacturing and distribution. The whole deal that went down with the clean and fresh products called Power, people organizing, working together for economic rebirth, was that Johnson & Johnson at that time, when the minister was going to start trying to get with black people to do our manufacturing, then you find out that Johnson said, well, I can't do it because the Jewish distributor said that we'll take every single one of your products off the shelf. So you're manufacturing something, but you don't control your distribution. So the key to any kind of nation building is you have to control, as we were talking about earlier, you have to be the manufacturer, as they were doing, as you said, doing segregation. And you have to be in control of your distribution. The black banks, the minister put the $5 million in a black bank. They asked him to come take it back because of fear of the pressure from the Jewish and the banking regulators. See? So that just goes to show you who's in control. And if we ever going to get control again, it's back to what we've been talking about the whole program, independent thinking, separation from all of their ideas, all of their ways, and all of the confusingly trapping and words that they use to keep us constantly confused, the Willie Lynch syndrome.
And at each other.
And at
White
each other.
supremacy exists to produce black on black conflict.
Exactly.
And that's what it does. So we have to minimize conflict, maximize cooperation with each other.
Yes, sir.
And that means we have to get a knowledge of ourselves. That's where that's
right.
Everything he's talking about implementing starts with knowing who you are, whose you are. And if we're not willing to learn about who we are, then the as he said, the conflict between us and our brother living in the same neighborhood, I can't let that NIGGER N word, if you will, for lack of a better thing, I can't let him do better than me, as opposed to seeing my brother's success as my success.
Absolutely. So Politico reports that Governor Gavin Newsom of California responded after a state task force that calculated the cost at up to $1.2 million per person in reparations, direct payments. And okay, so look, I think we all could kind of agree that if that kind of money comes down the line, listen, Gucci sold out, Louis Vuitton sold out, K Jewelers sold out, Cadillac sold out.
They would have all of the money right back again.
Are African Americans, are we able to organize, those of us who are thinking African Americans? Are we able to maybe come together and invest, or maybe even get into some real estate and things like that? And so, Brother Khari, I'd like to start with you.
I think the minister is correct in that, because it doesn't make up for what's missing. See, it's more than just money. Mm-hmm. It has to do with the totality of a people. We have lost our peoplehood. We have the elements that bond the people together have been destroyed. Maybe not destroyed, because they're still in the back of our minds. We'd have to use the right language to trigger those words.
Yes, right.
But yes, I believe the closest I saw to putting this together, and I have to give them their just due, was Elijah Muhammad, Marcus Garvey. They were the closest two that I saw to putting the model together that could make it work. That means the totality of the being has to be reborn. You just can't give me no money. You give me money and I'm still the same fool. Like the minister said, I'm going to do the same thing. I'll be broke in 6 months. Then
just
what? And then all the money goes right back to them.
Right.
And so they make out.
Right.
And then they can say, well, look, we took care of y'all.
Right. The economy's great now.
Yeah.
Because we cut them loose with reparations checks.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Reparations has to mean making up for what's missing. Mm-hmm. It's just that
repair.
Simple. You got to repair people.
Right.
You got to take care of everything. Why do we have 80% of our households with no males in there?
Come on now.
80% of our house. What led to that? What created that condition? Sure. Mm-hmm. Why generation after generation so many of our people are drug addicted? Mm-hmm. Why so many of our people are mass incarcerated? Why so many of our people are living in poverty, et cetera? Why so many of our communities look like third world nations over and over and over and over, century after century?
In every
same problem
city
that the minister was talking about in 1953, he can apply equally today. Why is that? Because there's been no fundamental change in our condition around the world. Now, how does that happen? Either we are genetically inferior, which we know ain't true.
Come on now.
Or there's a system in place that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to implement units of white supremacy, domination behavior every day. And that's why I call the term racial warfare.
Yes,
that's
sir.
exactly what we're dealing with 24 hours a day. And until we create the language that frames what we are dealing with, we won't know what to do.
Yes, sir.
But do I believe that we can organize it? Absolutely we can. Black people can turn on a dime.
Yes, sir.
That's how great we are.
Yes, sir.
We can turn on a dime. I saw us do it, and the minister saw it in the 70s. All of a sudden, we went to, drinking a lot of wine, and the Panthers was the classic example.
Right.
All of a sudden, that spirit hit them, bam! They were warriors. It can change overnight, and white supremacy understands that about us.
Right.
That's why they keep feeding us all this madness over and over, because they know we can flip overnight, and once we do, we're a force that cannot be dealt with.
And I have to say this, I think we saw a tip of the iceberg with that brawl, how recently
down there in Memphis,
they were swimming to the fight. They didn't even know any of the black people.
Yeah.
All they know is they saw one black man getting jumped.
That's all it
and
takes.
It didn't matter if you were a Christian,
it takes that.
Muslim,
it takes
Seventh-day Adventist.
That's it.
They said, "Oh, a black man is getting jumped. Oh, where's a chair?" And they all jumped in and didn't even think about it. I don't see any other groups react like that without asking questions first. But
once that concept takes hold,
listen.
Woo.
Well, see, the key again, as we were discussing earlier, think about what he just got through saying about the 50s and the 60s and the 30s. Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and many others. Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, Muammar Gaddafi, Fidel Castro. We have worked with all of these nations. So millions of words. The scripture says it like this: in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelled among men. Words are not some empty rhetoric, not real words. All a word is a thought. And thoughts are real, right? Mm-hmm. They are the energy generated from the brain or the mind.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
It creates a vibration. Mm-hmm. You can speak to a person in a hospital bed. It takes the brain, it takes the blood 500 seconds or 8 minutes and 20 seconds to flow from the top of the head to the heel of the foot, back to the top of the head again. So you go into a hospital room. I've seen this in terms of ministry. You walk in that hospital room, the patient's laying there, tubes all out their ears, everywhere, and you go in, and you may see that monitor fluctuate. Go into that same room and sit by that person and hold their hand and speak some positive words, offer some energy of hope. And in 8 minutes, 20 seconds, or 500 seconds, you will see the countenance of that person actually change for the better, because words have power. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, right?
Yes, sir.
But against principalities, spiritual wickedness in high places. See, that's what we up against.
Yes, sir.
So it starts here. Got to change this mind. Got to change this mind from self-hatred. That's the first thing they attacked. They separated the children from the elders. You think Kunta Kinte was the slave that they brought over here to build the plantations and lay out Washington, D.C.? No. All of our people were not Africans running around with spears and living in huts. What about Timbuktu, Mali, Shanghai? These were highly civilized nations. There are African nations even right now that's more modern than some of the cities here in America. But they want us to think, whenever you see National Geographic or something, that everybody, we did y'all a favor. I had a preacher say to me one day, thank God that the white man came over there in Africa and got us and gave us Christianity.
He said that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we're not arguing about the true message of Christ. I have no problem with the true message of Jesus Christ, but I do have a problem with veiled white supremacy under the name of Christ entity, which really is the Antichrist. White supremacy is an anti-Christ message. And if they painted Jesus as a white man, when in reality we knew he was a black man described in their own book, what if the young people today knew that Jesus was in fact their brother, black like them? Would they be running around with their pants sagging, killing one another, if I knew I was connected to the man that they say is my savior? So if the image is false, then the words that support that image are also false. So I got to read the Bible in another whole way. There are some English words that have no there are Arabic and Hebraic words that have no English equivalents. So King James and them translated some accidentally and some on purpose to give it another whole damn meaning. Like, for example, if they got a book out, you can go to the library, and it may be in the rare book section now. It's called the Slave Bible. It doesn't look like the regular Bible. It only has those verses that if you saw the movie Nat Turner with Nate Parker. But anyway, slave, obey your master. Slave, don't steal your master's chickens. Slave, if he strike you on, if he take your coat, give him your pants also. And that's how many of our slave forefathers preached the Bible. So if you're in 2023 still preaching, I'm not saying all preachers are like that. There's some powerful black Christian preachers out here.
Yes,
most of them are younger ones, though.
Yes, sir.
The Jeremiah Wrights, remember, was it James Cone back in the 60s? Black Liberation Theology. Yeah. But we've gotten away from that like we've gotten away from everything else. We preach a dead letter. Everybody preaching about hope up in the sky. But what about the promised land right here? Nowhere in Scripture can you show me where Jesus talked about heaven up in the sky. He said, in my Father's house, there are many mansions. Mansions are not built in the sky, they built on the planet.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ooh, well, let me see. Let me get my focus together. Okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't
I'm thinking because
to digress.
No, sir. I'm thinking because I'm writing down notes as you're speaking. Well, I've never even heard.
He got me started.
No, I've never even heard of some of the pastors that you mentioned. I had to write down with the black. I'll make a notes about the Black Liberation Theology, and I'm like, I've never even heard that before.
James Cone.
James Cone was one of the early architects.
This is news to me, and so I'm just like, I feel like I'm in class. You guys are doing a clinic in here today.
but just think about back in the day.
Yeah.
How could Nat Turner, as a Christian preacher, see in the Bible liberation for his people and then fight against them and create a rebellion? How did Harriet Tubman see the Scripture and knew she had to get away from the same people? So you have the Southern Baptists. We are always what? Second Baptists. You have the Methodist Church. Then you have the African Methodist Episcopalian. Why is that? Because we could not worship with them. So why would I want to break away and create a black thing, but basically preach the same white message, but just put a black face on it?
Wow.
The whole theology, as he said, all the systems that they have for us are white supremacist systems. Their religion is white supremacist. Their education is menticide. Their factories and businesses are destructive. They got chemical waste. They expose you to radiation. Like what is it called? Economic racism or environmental racism. I used to be a security guard at Building 1 right down there on Broad and High. And sometime at night, you could smell the funk, a little light rain and a breeze. You could smell the funk, the stench would take your breath away.
The pollution was just so much that you could even... Southern slave states enacted anti-literacy laws between 1740 and 1834. Prohibiting anyone from teaching enslaved and free people of color to read or write, fearing that black literacy would prove a threat to the slave system, which relied on slaves' dependence on masters. Slaves were forbidden to read or write. And so, Brother Khari, I'd like to start with you. Could a proper education of African Americans or free college be considered for reparations in America?
If it makes up for what's missing, yes. All things are on the table when you talk about making up for what's missing. What you described there was what I would call one of the stages of white supremacy. That was the hardcore racist stage. That was the brutal stage of white supremacy. One of the reasons why white supremacy has changed today is because they cannot continue to implement the brute force of white supremacy. So they had to go through what they call a refinement stage. Let's fool them. Let's treat them. Let's make them think we're treating them better, but we don't change the power relationship. Because if you continue to brutalize them like you were doing in Alabama and places like that, you're going to have what? Civil war. Mm-hmm. And if you have warfare, you cannot have economics. Economics cannot develop when there's conflict. Mm-hmm. It has to be peace, if you know what I mean.
Yes, sir.
People have to feel like they're participating in something and they're a part of it. That's the reason why that's why the language has changed dramatically.
It's become more refined,
well,
more
of course,
fierce.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So it's more deceptive. So now we say diversity. Mm-hmm. Now we say tolerance. Now, just the word tolerance ought to tell you something. Wait a minute, you got to tolerate me? Mm-hmm. But our people go with it because we have been trained that white people are superior. Whatever they have is better. And there's no hope for us without them. And so that training, and then they take what they call the talented 10th. Du Bois called them the talented 10th. But they take this group and they condition them to be those who they put in front, and they use them as the images. They'll blow them up, make them rich, whatever, Negro rich, because richness, they control the money. Right. So you never control the money.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you get to show the money off.
Right.
You get to flash the money.
Right.
So it makes the people think, oh my God, Michael Jordan got this. Dick Gregory came out and once said, Mike Jordan broke. You know, because when you look at how money is really controlled, you understand that we have no money. We have no wealth because we don't organize money.
So there's a difference between money and wealth.
We don't organize. When a people are not organized, when they don't have a code of behavior, when they don't have a code of thinking, when they don't have a code for what it is, a purpose or meaning or reason for why, because those elements have been stripped from them. Remember I talked about the basic ingredients that bond the people together: language, culture, history, religion, all of those things that come from their history. Once that's stripped from a people, then you create confusion. Then they're scattered. They're all over the place. They don't know. They have no ID. They don't know who they are. And it's very hard to bring them together. The one thing that probably brought us together in the 60s was the oppression, was the hard treatment that they were putting on us. Well, then that bonds people. Once they said, okay, look, let's go. Let's refine this thing now. Let's treat them nice.
There you go.
Let's ease up. Well, once that eased up, what happened? Now all of a sudden we all are independent. We don't see no oppression, all that stuff.
Right.
That's why you have to use the language, white supremacy, domination.
Yes, sir.
Nothing has changed.
Right.
You're still under their total control from the sun up to sundown. Everything that's life-giving and life-saving comes from them.
That's a fact.
Everything. If I'm lying, prove it to me.
Yes, sir.
You can go through your house, everything in your house. What did we produce? A whole race of people totally shut out. How does that happen? How does that happen?
Yeah.
Yes, it does not happen. We're talking about the schools now.
Yeah.
Already they're showing us when you got black schools in Columbus where 89 to 90% of the children cannot read, cannot do math,
That's a disgrace.
Cannot comprehend. No, right now.
Yeah.
Cannot do any of that.
Well, I had a conversation.
They're guaranteeing that for the next 25 to 50 years, our condition will remain the same.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
But I was having a conversation with a friend who is a teacher in the district. And she said something, and I can't stop. I think about it at least once a day. She said, we live in a country now that kids know exactly what a transgender person is, but they can't name 3 countries in Africa, let alone
That's right.
3 languages of Africa.
It's called the dumbing down of America.
And
they can't answer simple geography.
Can't read with
so
comprehension.
education,
Can't do math.
Because of
write.
these agendas that
they
you see
keep
on
you,
social media.
Yeah, they are training you to be in the same position that you're in today. That's all they're guaranteeing. And that's the whole purpose of it. For example, why is there no class on how to control the economy of the community that you live in? Why aren't second graders and third grade, black second graders and third graders learning how to build businesses in their own communities right now? Why aren't they growing up learning how to control the systems in their community, how to build sidewalks, how to build cities? We have to teach our people how to build.
Right.
But in order to do that, we got to get a codified state of mind where we're on one accord, where we minimize conflict, maximize cooperation. We need a code of conduct.
That's right.
So that we hold each other to standards. That, in a nutshell, changes the behavior. Those standards which we once held have been destroyed because they flooded our community with crack cocaine. They flooded our community with this kind of music, with sexuality, all of that stuff to break down the very fabric that held that standard up. Run the father out of the home, create chaos, and that's what we have right now. We're functioning with a chaotic system that's designed to keep us exactly where we are. That's racial warfare. That's what I mean when I say racial war. And it happens generation after generation. That's not by accident. That's by design.
It's called social engineering. But to your question about the educational system, remember, historically, the historic black colleges were set up in the beginning by white folks during this so-called Emancipation Proclamation. And they were to teach us the science of warfare, the science of business, and the science of mating. But like Gamaliel in the scriptures, when they wanted to attack Paul and kill him and said he's not a true spiritual person, Gamaliel was an attorney and a minister or a rabbi. He said, well, I say leave him alone, because if he is in fact who he says he is, we may find ourselves fighting God himself. And if he's not who he says he is, we've already had people that have gone before him who said they were this and that, but they ended up fizzling out. So same way with these people, with these senators. When this was proposed, one of them said, whoa, wait a minute. Going back to what he said earlier, if you teach them that, hell, they may be able to build their own nation and hell, rise up and come back against us. That's always been the fear of what? In the scriptures, what? The fear of Pharaoh was what? That the children of Israel were multiplying. And if we don't stop their birth rate, they may one day multiply, join on to an enemy of ours, and come against us. See, all these scriptures, when properly understood, you can connect them as opposed to them just being some preachment is about Spooksville. History and prophecy are really the same. And if we understood the scriptures properly, the white man has made the scriptures 75% of what's written in the Bible is prophecy, 25% is history. And what they have done is got us looking back at the 75% prophecy as history. So we're looking back and we live in the prophecy right now. And then my last point on that is this. So what they said was, no, we cannot teach them that. Why not teach them the history of the science of business? Because the science of business is the science of life itself. If you manage a business and learn those principles, then you can manage your household better.
Manage your community.
So we don't want them learning that. So that was out.
Right.
What's this thing about the science of mating? Well, okay. You have what is called in animal husbandry, what is called purebred animals. A stallion, an Arabian stallion. Or you take a bull terrier and a bull terrier and a bulldog, and you get a pit bull. You take a donkey and a horse, you get a mule that is a neuter gendered animal. A mule cannot reproduce, but he's the product of the genetic engineering of a horse and a donkey. you get a pig. A pig is 1/3 rat, 1/3 cat, 1/3 dog. A man-made animal designed to clean out swamps and swampland. He was used in the hills and cave sides of Europe to clean up behind white folks who did not know how to bury their dead at that time before Mosque came and brought them out. What am I saying again? Then finally, so the science of mating is that we produce giants by accident. Where white folks used that same science, and they did a lot of inbreeding though, and come up with these crazy people, but they chose their wives and husbands for their children because they wanted to continue the continuity of their so-called superiority. So what happens when you made up an intelligent person based on not on she got big butt, big boobs, but on intelligence, the unseen qualities of a woman, the unseen qualities of a man, because romance without finance is a nuisance. His cute ain't gonna pay the rent. Her beauty can't take care of the family and the babies and raise them properly. I'm saying all of that to say these are sciences we have to bring back. That's what produces wealth. You don't have wealth not by some dollars. Right now, at one time, the dollar was represented by what? Upon the bearer of this note, render unto him an equal amount in either silver or gold. That's real wealth. So until you own some earth that the gold comes out of, that the silver comes out of, you have no wealth. So the Queen of England is old money, real money, land money, gold money. Bill Gates is paper money.
And that's that. And that's a fact. And so I have one more question. Okay. And so the Black family, when I say the Black family, I mean foundational Black Americans. Sometimes lately we'll say Black people and people think, okay, Haitians, Somalians, immigrants, things like that. And so I have to say African American foundational Black Americans have endured violence, crime, the crack era, Reaganomics, the civil rights era, sharecropping, Tuskegee experiment, Rosewood, and the list goes on. Our elders that survived Jim Crow have passed on. Our sharecroppers are ones who were born into slavery and things like that. And so I just want to shift gears for a moment and talk about honor. I was speaking to Brother Donnell earlier about how I used to watch kung fu flicks with my dad growing up. And sometimes you would hear them say, you know, you dishonored the family. You dishonor the family name and things like that. And so honoring your family in the African American tradition held weight in our community. And so should reparations come to our community, what is the very best way to honor our ancestors? Brother Khari, I'd like to